How can a car considered obsolete transform a team into crisis in the fastest of the most technical circuit of the F1? Ferrari has found an answer as unexpected as effective. But is this just a flash or the beginning of a revolution? The 2025 season was outlined as a continuity of the progress shown by Ferrari in 2024. The Scuderia had closed the previous campaign with promising signs: a solid second place in the Construction Championship, a car, the SF24, that showed moments of technical brilliance, especially in circuits where the precision and the traction at low speed were key. Charles Leclerc even achieved 5 victories, including a memorable in Abu Dhabi where he traced from 14th position. However, that narrative collapsed at the beginning of the new year. In the first 7 races of the 2025 season, Ferrari found himself fighting not only against his rivals, but against his own car. The SF25, its weapon for the new era, quickly showed it to be an inadequate tool for modern Formula One challenges. Unlike SF24, the new design suffered from an alarming inconsistency in classification, an area where the team hoped to make a qualitative leap. Saturday's sessions became an ordeal, with both pilots frequently outside the top 5 and forced to go back on Sundays. The problem was not limited to the lack of pure speed. There was an obvious disconnection between chassis aerodynamics and the dynamic behavior of the car in race conditions. In particular, the rear stability of the SF25 was weak under aggressive braking, a fatal weakness in a championship where every thousandth. This aerodynamic fragility translated into loss of confidence on the part of the pilots, especially in circuits where the margin of error is non-existent. Lewis Hamilton, just arrived from Mercedes, described his adaptation to the car as an uphill battle. Although the British contributed tons of experience, he even found difficulties in finding the sweet point of the car. Its technical piloting, characterized by a soft curve input and a progressive transition in the accelerator, simply did not harmonize with the SF25 delivery profile. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, began to show signs of frustration. Although more accustomed to Ferrari's DNA, the Monegasco publicly denounced the lack of response from the team to its technical feedback. And out of the cabin, the panorama was no longer encouraging. Internally, Ferrari was dealing with strategic dissonance. Between continuing the development of the SF25 with new solutions that did not deliver consistent results, or redirect their efforts towards adapting what is already known. The pressure on Frédéric Vasseur grew, and the patience both of the Dome and the Tifosi began to wear out. The SF25 not only failed to deliver results, it failed to transmit confidence. This bleak context served as a preamble to the technical miracle that was created in the streets of Monaco. Ferrari, facing the reality of a season that could escape too early, decided that it was time to rethink his approach. Not in terms of revolution, but of surgical precision. This choice, as we will see, not only saved its weekend, but could mark a before and after in its 2025 narrative. In an environment as competitive as Formula One modern, where constant innovation seems to be the only viable path to the top, Ferrari opted for a strategy that, at first glance, seemed contradictory: to look at the past to solve the problems of the present. Instead of developing a new aerodynamic solution from zero for Monaco, a track where each curve can decide a race, the team made the radical decision to reinstall the rear wing of the SF24 in its SF25. This piece, developed a year earlier, had been specifically optimized for low-speed circuits and high aerodynamic load, such as the Monegasco Principality, where the lines are short and the curves, particularly technical. This change was not a mere nostalgic gesture or desperate improvisation. It was the result of a deep technical evaluation in Maranello, where engineers analyzed the performance data of 2024 and concluded that certain characteristics of the SF24 still exceeded their successor in specific conditions. Among the technical aspects recovered, the most significant was the profile of the main wing and its mobile flap. Both were re-ejected with lighter materials and new anchor points to adapt to the SF25 chassis. The objective was clear: generate a much larger aerodynamic load without compromising efficiency in the few acceleration areas. But the technical intervention was not limited to the wing. Ferrari introduced an adjustment package that included the modification of the front track rod, the review of the suspension fairings, and a reconfiguration of the brake scoop. These adaptations allowed a higher individual direction angle on the front wheels, which is crucial for maneuverability in closed curves that abound in Monaco. This approach allowed the SF25, until then clumsy in small spaces, became an agile and precise car, capable of cutting the curves with unusual fluency for what was seen in the season. This process of retroadaptation of the car also implied a complete revaluation of the suspension setup. A softer configuration was chosen, which allowed a better absorption of the irregularities of the Monégasque asphalt, without compromising the contact of the tires with the track. In parallel, the team adjusted the engine maps and the differential to maximize traction in curve outputs, a vital aspect where errors usually translate into unrecoverable losses. The execution of this strategy revealed an unpublished technical maturity in Ferrari. Under the baton of Frédéric Vasseur, the team showed that Formula One does not always reward the novelty per se, but the ability to recognize when a previously successful solution can be more effective than a theoretically more advanced theoretically. Instead of wasting resources in a specific package for a single race, Ferrari recycled and optimized surgical precision, thus transforming SF25 into a real threat into the most challenging layout of the calendar. While the paddock wondered how it was possible that Ferrari, so irregular in previous careers, dominated Monaco's training, the response lay in a rare combination of pragmatism, technical humility, and an intelligent reading of the regulation. Because in a sport where innovation usually monopolizes the headlines, Ferrari showed that true excellence can also be built from experience, when it is used with the accuracy of a Swiss watch.in team with the legacy and symbolic weight of Ferrari. The incorporation of Lewis Hamilton represented much more than a media hiring. It was a declaration of intentions. The seven-time world champion arrived in Maranello with a reputation forged in steel, excellence under pressure, technical domain on machinery, and an unparalleled capacity to find tents where others only saw limits. But in the Monaco GP, that reputation not only remained, it became a catalyst for the resurgence of the equipment. Hamilton soon left his mark. From the winter tests, a different narrative began to emerge around their interaction with Italian engineers. Unlike what had been seen in his last years in Mercedes, where he seemed emotionally disconnected from the development of the car, in Ferrari he adopted an active role from the first day. He did not just offer general impressions. On the contrary, he contributed precise details about the response of the car in combined braking, the sensitivity of the direction when entering a medium curve, and above all, how the tire housing should work to exploit its operational window. Monaco was the ideal terrain for this technical symbiosis to become visible. Hamilton, who knows every centimeter of the streets of the Principality, immediately detected that the SF25 could benefit from a different configuration in the peso cast. It was he who insisted on testing a softer suspension alignment on the front axle and a slight redistribution of the dough towards the center of the car, to improve traction without compromising stability. This proposal, which in another context would have been seen as risky, was quickly adopted by the technical team, which was already beginning to recognize the value of each British intervention. The result was immediate. The SF25, which until then suffered from surviving at the entrance to slow curves and subviring in rapid changes, began to show a more neutral behavior. Traction at the exit of critical curves such as Mirabeau, Portier, or La Rascasse improved significantly, allowing both Hamilton and Leclerc to squeeze the tires without fear of losing the rear train. It was a subtle change in numbers but monumental in sensations. For the first time in the season, both pilots talked about a predictable, controllable, and, above all, fast car. Hamilton's case is even more revealing if we consider its Ferrari-style adaptation. In the first great awards of the year, the British was often fighting a car that did not respond like the Mercedes he had piloted for more than a decade. In Monaco, however, that fight became synergy. His fluid and aggressive style, optimized for urban clues, lined up perfectly with the new characteristics of reconfigured SF25. And although Leclerc was the fastest in the time leaves, it was Hamilton who marked the technical pattern that allowed that speed. This dynamic reveals an evolution in the internal leadership of the team. Ferrari not only added a champion pilot, he added a track engineer. Someone who is not afraid to question traditional configurations, who proposes alternatives based on accumulated experience, and who are willing to experiment even in a scenario as unpredictable as Monaco. Hamilton's presence is no longer symbolic. It is strategic. His influence has begun to alter not only the way Ferrari prepares his weekends, but also his collective mentality. Where before there was a desperate search for external solutions, there is now confidence in the internal ability to iterate, try and evolve. If Ferrari's performance in Monaco has lit a spark of hope in Maranello, that spark bears the fingerprints of Lewis Hamilton. Because beyond speed, what the British has brought Ferrari is a vision. And in Formula One, vision is usually the first step towards victory. What happened with Ferrari in the practices of the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix cannot be explained as a simple momentary performance rebound. It was, in essence, a multifaceted and deeply strategic response to a series of technical and confidence crises that threatened to derail their season. The transformation of the SF25 in the hands of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton was not a product of chance, but the result of a perfect convergence between technical decision, pilot experience, and an impeccable execution at the most appropriate time. In a context where Formula One seems to reward only constant evolution and avant-garde innovation, Ferrari chose a path that few would dare to follow: return to an ancient solution and adapt it with a surgical technical rigor. This election not only returned competitiveness, but evidenced a new maturity within Maranello. It is no longer a team imprisoned for its own legacy or a sleeping giant that responds only with speed when the car is good. It is an organization capable of coldly evaluating its limitations, recognizing when an idea does not work and having the humility necessary to look back if the past offers more efficient answers. The return of the SF24 wing not only improved the performance of the car. He redefined his track behavior, transforming to SF25 of an erratic and inconstant car to a machine capable of responding precisely in one of the most demanding paths of the calendar. The way the car faced the challenges of the Monegasco asphalt showed that Ferrari still has the ability to surprise and, more importantly, to adapt. In a sport where the lack of reaction can be more lethal than the lack of speed, this ability to adapt can make the difference between a forgettable year and a memorable campaign. On the other hand, Lewis Hamilton's role should not be underestimated. Its ability to identify technical micro-details, clearly communicate the needs of the car and press to implement risky changes was crucial. In any other structure, perhaps its suggestions would have been filed under conservatism. But in Ferrari, his vision found echo. What resulted was a tangible demonstration of how the technical leadership of a pilot can change the immediate destiny of a team. And this is not a minor luxury, it is a competitive advantage. Ferrari has not yet won anything in 2025. The podiums are still elusive, the victories an objective to specify. But Monaco performance cannot only be seen as a statistical anomaly or a strategic carambola. It is an alert signal for the other teams and an affirmation for their own. The Red Giant still lives and now has both the brain and the reflexes to fight again. If this performance marks the renaissance of Ferrari or if it was only a brilliant exception will be a matter of analysis on the following dates of the calendar. What is undeniable is that, for the first time in many months, the entire paddock looks at Maranello with respect again. And in Formula One, that respect is never given, it is won. Carrera a carrera, return to turn, decision to decision. And this time Ferrari decided well.